Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year, and welcome to our regular council meeting for January 3rd, 2023. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories and the oral practices of the Blackfoot Nation, which include the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Bakani. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. We're making this acknowledgement to demonstrate our continuing efforts to work together as we strive for reconciliation through increased and collective learning. Okay, we have starting off with a staff introduction. And that's Amanda.
Through the chair to Mayor Petrie and Council, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Darren Scott. He is the newest City of Brooks Handybus Specialized Transit Service driver. Darren comes to us with over 30 years of experience with Her Majesty's Armed Services, or Armed Forces, and civilian organizations. His career began in the military, and he steadily progressed through the ranks into a senior management position within the operations of the British Army's largest training unit at CFB Suffield in 2004. His most recent role, he worked for the City of Medicine Hat as the food services supervisor, working with seniors and persons with disabilities and volunteers, including providing the valuable Meals on Wheels service to those within the Medicine Hat community. Darren's first day with the City of Brooks was on December 19th, 2022, and we are extremely happy to have Darren join our team. Welcome, Darren.
Yeah, welcome, Darren. Yeah. Yeah, welcome again. Yeah. Welcome. Darren has family in the community here too, a good family, so that's what brought him here. So we welcome you to Brooks there, Darren. Thank you very much. Okay, moved by Councillor Goodenough that the agenda be adopted. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Idris that the minutes from the regular council meeting held December 19th, 2022 be approved. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Councillor Jessica that the following items of correspondence be received as information, updates on council conferences and or workshops, and the accounts payable listing. Councillor Idris.
Thank you. I attended my first meeting of the Municipal Governance Committee with Alberta municipalities, and there was a lot. It was a full-day meeting, and in this committee, one of their main work is preparing the resolutions for the AGM, for the annual convention, but also looking at everything that has to do with policy in the future of municipal governance. And actually, I would just want to focus on one of the things that we focused on that day. There is actually a project that started about maybe 2-3 years ago, I think, around the time our ex-mayor was the president of the organization. And it's a project to look at the future of municipal governance. And there is a number of different areas that they are focusing on, and those are organizing Canadian local government, looking into the future, population growth and aging, municipal financing, environment and weather consideration for municipal governance, citizen engagement, and the changing dynamics of the position of the chief administrative officer within municipalities. And there are actually research papers on all of these topics that has already been done. I think 3 of them has already been done and published, and there is 2 coming up in the next couple months. And then there will be a President's Summit at the end of March to present these papers and to look into what does that mean for different municipalities, different sizes, big, small, medium municipalities, and the project. There is some tension with the RMA. There is some understanding that this is maybe just laying the work for amalgamation and using the word sustainability to present that case. But actually, it's a very balanced. Like there was couple of the researchers that came that day and presented their papers, there was very balanced approach in that there isn't one size fits all for all municipalities, and yes, that could be a solution for some municipalities, but not for some other municipalities. And it looks like the RMA went ahead and hired a consultant to look at this and present their own views. And interestingly enough, the consultant's paper kind of emphasized some of the same points that the Alberta municipalities papers are emphasizing. So they are inviting them also to the summit. The summit will be at the end of March, as I said, and I think it will be an interesting summit to attend, and I think they are putting it in a time where there are some things going on. I think the mayors of small and medium cities are meeting at the same time, so some people will be there for that, and then they're inviting some municipal leaders from all over the country, actually, that has gone through some similar work, and they will look at that day. That actually took almost like 1/4 of the meeting, and then some of the other things, that there was some changes with the schedules around how municipalities are presenting their resolutions. I think the major change is that they shortened the time frame, where in the past you could have actually submitted resolution or changes to resolution till the night before. Now you actually have to do everything about a week before that, although still keeping that the original plan of around May. I think the drafts need to be submitted and be approved to go in the book. Some interesting work at the committee. I'm very excited. We are meeting again, I think, in February, and I hope that I can bring more topics and more stuff for our own concentration. Thank you.
The presentations and the liaison or the meeting with the RMA, is that at the Spring Caucus meeting then, in the end of March?
Yes.
They'll be at the end of March, yeah. And I think Mid-City Mayors is the week before that.
Yeah. So they're trying to put it all together, so that there is, like, you can go for a week to Edmonton and then
put them
have a couple of meetings.
okay, yeah, sounds good. Okay, any other questions? Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councillor Nesbitt that the Salt Flat Solar Project presentation be accepted as information. Mr. Mindorf, if you want to come forward, please. Well, welcome to Brooks. Your partner beside you is?
Jay Phillipson.
Okay.
Can you turn this thing on?
Yeah, just push the button there, yeah. Yeah, you
There
got
we
it.
go.
Perfect,
How's that?
thank you.
Perfect. I want to thank Mr. Mayor and council members for this opportunity to further enlighten you on our proposed solar development called Salt Flats within the city of Brooks. The project, the PowerPoint that's up there, is meant as a preliminary opening discussion document. It's not meant to be highly detailed. We're at the front end of the beginning of this project. We are starting our public consultation. One of the things that we value, next slide please. One of the things that we, well, maybe I should go into who PACE is. Start with the program. PACE is a joint venture between a UK company called Pathfinder Clean Energy and Goldbeck Solar, which is a large EPC or engineering procurement contractor in Germany that builds both conventionally as well as solar projects and has done so for the last 20 years. These two partners formed a company called PACE Canada LP, which its sole purpose is to build renewable energy projects currently only in the province of Alberta. That the components of those solar projects may involve at some future point in time the manufacture of other goods through the renewable energy such as green hydrogen or ammonia. We're exploring both of those. All of our new projects that we're developing under PACE Solar actually involve the use of battery energy storage at this point in time as well. Although the rules for those battery energy storage projects are not quite known yet, as the AESO hasn't defined them till first quarter of this coming year. So we'll keep moving on. Our core values are collaboration, accountability, and passion. We like to collaborate with the communities that we're in with. We talk to a great extent with the members of the community, whether they're the landowner or budding landowners, industries. We try to collaborate with municipalities who are interested in achieving sustainable development goals to hit their own sustainability targets. We're accountable to the population that we impact. We take great pride in the fact that when somebody needs to talk to us, we're available, we're there. We like to think that we have the best of the best in our development programs, but like everyone else, we're open to change. Our chief function here is that we believe that the world is turning towards renewable energies and sustainable practices everywhere that we look, not just in the production of electricity, but all of it basically starts with the use of energy. Electricity will continue to increase in its importance in meeting Canada's climate change, Alberta climate change goals. And our goal is to obtain sustainable development within our projects. That does speak very strongly to the continued use of our lands for agriculture. We're one of the pioneering companies in Canada that's promoting a study called agrivoltaics, which looks at the various ways that agriculture can be enhanced through the use of renewable energy. Part of our, and that speaks to the passion that we have, which is our last value, which basically we are completely devoted to making the best possible solar projects and renewable energy projects that enhance agriculture instead of removing these lands from production. Why Alberta? Well, Alberta is a deregulated market, is one of the few that is fully deregulated in North America, Texas being the other one. And Texas is, we often call Alberta, when you're talking about the electrical system, Little Texas, because there's very much similarities between ERCOT and the AESO system. We have some of the best wind and solar lands across North America. I've spent the last 25 years developing both wind and solar across North America. And as such, we're aware of the fact that we have a very unique resource that is above us and all around us as opposed to underneath us. The sites that we've selected, which you can see up there, have been selected primarily for a number of converging factors. A willing landowner is the first one. Connection to the grid where we can get the power out is certainly second in that. Suitable lands for development is the third. Currently under construction, this is Jay Phillipson. He's a project manager with our company who happens to be living in the city of Brooks currently. Jay's responsibility is those projects that are in construction right now. We have two phases of Joffre being built currently outside of the fence at Nova Joffre. And we have another smaller project about 1.5 miles south of the town of Youngstown, which is actually in construction now. Next year, we propose that Hanna Sheerness, which is Canada's first solar project built on reclaimed mine lands. So it is actually built on the Sheerness mine site. It is the first of 3 projects that we propose for these mines as they close. Caroline is a 16.1 megawatt project similar to Brooks. It's within the urban boundary on municipal reserve lands. And then, of course, our newest project that we're speaking to you today is Brooks. To avoid the confusion of Brooks 1 and 2, we're calling it Salt Flats Solar. If any of you have been out to this site or are aware of this site, it abuts the feedlot to the north that runs along the service road and comes up north, runs in behind Uplands Estates. That's the best way to describe it. It's not a very productive piece of land. The Stein family that owns it and manages it grazes 6 cow-calf pairs on the entire quarter. We think we can do better. We think that because of this land, this 160 acres that's within the urban boundary of the city of Brooks, there's the legal land description. It has a bunch of converging factors that brought it forward in our land selection. We looked at 10 sites within the city of Brooks and surrounding Brooks over the last couple of years, and this is the convergence of the best available information. Next site. So we're proposing to use up to 100 acres. That's roughly the land that's required. We use a metric of 6 acres per megawatt when looking at lands, and that's 6 acres of land that doesn't include wetlands or native grasslands or any of the other lands that are off base for developing solar on. The lands will be abutting Uplands Estates, as you see there. There are a number of rural acreages that we will address with face-to-face consultation running along the county road to the west, as you can see there. The substation is down in the far, far corner on Vernier Road, in and around where Newell Recycling is, if you know where that is, just north of those two stormwater management ponds. The proposed output is 18.5 megawatts AC. We will be building more likely 1.2 times that, so roughly 22 megawatts DC. The electricity is then converted into AC for the grid, and we've been told by Fortis in our early studies with them that we can export 18.5 megawatts. So roughly a little bit bigger than one of the phases of Brooks Solar. The grid capacity has been verified by Fortis, and we're just waiting for them to complete the next level of study before we make actual application to the AESO for this project to be welcomed into the queue. You'll note, if we could just go back for a minute. Thank you for accommodating me. You'll notice the salt in the bottom corner and in the upper northwest. There's significant wetlands in there, but there's also sloughs that dry out, and that saline gets brought to the surface from that salt leaching from the soils from always being wet. Our goal would be build around that, and then we are looking at incorporating some marsh grasses in there that will help us to actually desalinate the soils over time and increase the forage. Primarily, we'll be left with an opportunity either to graze small livestock or to actually pull off a forage crop from within it. So the community environmental benefits, obviously there's the jobs that come with construction. I think anybody will tell you that there is a great demand for labor and services when Brooks 1 and 2 were built. You know, we like to use the multiplier of 1 to 2, so every dollar we spend in the community has a multiplier of 2 times that effect. The project itself will cost $1.2 million per megawatt, or roughly $25 million, of which 30% will be consumed locally, that is within 100 kilometers of Brooks. And so we see there being significant contributions to the local economy, both from the temporary jobs. As far as full-time jobs go, solar, with the exception of single access tracking, requires very little in the way of maintenance. Over the life of the project, it generates roughly 2 man-person jobs over its life of 30 years. The most significant contribution cash-wise is to the landowners, who will significantly benefit from being host to this site, as well as the property tax that will come to the city of Brooks. You know, this creates a non-traditional farm income, as well as we hope to increasing the actual production. It is our goal, we talked about passion before, it is our goal at PACE to improve the production of agricultural products off of this land, as opposed to the perception that it actually pulls agricultural land out of production. A single access tracking system built over the entire 160 acres would actually remove less than 9 acres from cultivation. That's less than a pivot corner. Obviously, we're in support of rural economies. Our projects are largely situated in rural economies, and they are smaller projects. We focus largely on the 25 kV distribution grid, where our projects will always be somewhere between 10 and 25 megawatts. And that in itself is very unique because of the mobilization difficulties of doing smaller projects. But we felt that the benefit, the economic benefit, is better spread abroad. So like Brooks, we're hopefully going to just start between 10 and 14 new projects in small communities like Brooks over the next 6 months. Everybody's got their head turned towards greenhouse gases. Obviously, this reduces the overall carbon footprint for electricity exported to the grid. But we want to take it one step further. We want to look at being able to provide other jobs associated with renewable energy. There are companies out there. We have spoken directly with Alberta Agricultural Investment Arm, with their 6 analysts, whose job it is to go and find people who want to move to Alberta to make something from the agricultural products that we grow. And most of those companies are focused on, can we do it with a 0 carbon footprint? So there may well be an investment opportunity for a company to co-locate on lands near this to use renewable energy over time. Next slide. This is a typical solar farm development process for our type of project, which is inside the urban boundary, less than 25 megawatts. Most projects, the projects that we have at Youngstown and Joffrey are now in construction, but after 4 years, obviously 2 of those years being impacted by COVID. We look at larger projects that require larger studies with AEP, the AESO, that have larger transmission impact, that are 2 to 3 year projects. We are looking at this between 14 and 18 months. So we hope that this can start going into final engineering design third quarter of next year, and we might even get as far as putting in the fences and roads next year as well, if we receive the municipal development permits, if we receive permission from the AUC. So that's our overall target if you want to know what the year is on the left and then the year that is on the right. The green indicates the activities that we've undertaken, and the blue indicates those that are in progress. This presentation was done at the end of last year. Some of the blue that could be on there now are the first 3 or 4 other items where we're working on surface agreements. The grid application will go in the first quarter, and noise, glint, and glare studies will be undertaken. Our goal is that our ongoing public involvement process, which is being kicked off this week, Thursday night, 6 to 8, at the library at the JBS Center, which is a correction from the date that you saw in there earlier. The correct dates were published in the newspaper as well. That was my mistake, not Rhonda's. The one Canadian employee of PACE that's not here is Rhonda Barron. She's spent 20 years in the health sector, 2 years before joining us with Alberta Health, doing exactly what she does for us, which is project coordination and public consultation. And so her job is to actually go out and meet with people face to face, go into the communities, organize the public involvement sessions, the webinars. We expect with the Brooks Solar project that we will have at least 3 public consultation sessions. Our first is this Thursday. The next will probably be a web-based seminar because it will occur during the winter, where we'll roll out some of the technical studies that we've undertaken, like glint, glare, noise. We try to release the information both publicly and on our webpage. There is a webpage specifically for Salt Flat Solar hosted on our website. And as new things are known about the project, they will be updated. So that is besides talking to me or Rhonda, that is probably the public's best source of information. It's kept very current and is not stale dated. The goal here would be that by the time we are finished our public consultation, there shouldn't be a single person that is a stakeholder that hasn't heard about this project at least once and known where the source of information is. We take advantage of every avenue to discuss our projects, including both the 4th and the 5th estate. The mayor actually announced it on a radio session. Perhaps we could even look at doing an in-camera session on the radio to get that message out as well. We also look to populations that are interested that can't necessarily or don't have the technical skill to reach out into or attend the public open houses or the web-based seminars. So we have and will continue to do presentations in places like seniors' homes where there's a population that we can talk to who's interested. As we move through this progress, we're going through a recognized permitting process that has been well established in Alberta for permitting power projects. We gather up all of the studies, put them in front of the AUC, and the AUC looks at that, goes back into the community, sees who might be a stakeholder. I'm not telling you folks anything different. You've been through this process, Brooks 1 and 2. At the end of that process, generally the municipality, who we would hope at the point in time we file with the AUC would put together a letter of support. We wouldn't be asking for the municipal development permits prior to the AUC, because everything that you require for a municipal development permit consideration is actually what goes in front of the AUC, plus 1 or 2 other things that are specifically for the municipality, like road use agreements, et cetera. We would hope that all would be concluded by the fall of this year, and then we would move into final construction and some of the studies that have to be done once final equipment is selected and recirculated back to government agencies having jurisdiction. With that, our in-service date, we've asked for December 31st, 2023, but it might go into the first quarter of the next year. Some of those things are out of our control because the AESO is actually undergoing a major bureaucratic shift in how they look at projects being applied to for the grid, which they're launching in the first 6 months of this year. So essentially, last slide, I believe. Public engagement next steps, as we talked about this, we have many different avenues of public consultation. January 5th is what that should say, not the 7th. That was my fault. We have already commissioned the noise studies, the glint glare studies from our consultant Green Cat Renewables out of Calgary. And the environmental studies will be done in the spring once the snow is gone and things start to grow. I think that's the last piece.
Questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, just before we get started with the questions, I just want to clarify something. On your timeline there, you had seek municipal support in Q4 of 2022. Just so it's clear for the media and the public, this is the first time you've come to our council and that you've made the presentation on that. Most of us were aware of it. I live in the Uplands area, so I was aware of it because we did get that notice, in the mail on that. So I just wanted to make that clear. This is the first time you guys have appeared before our council.
Yes,
on that
absolutely.
too. Yeah. Okay, now I'll just open it up for questions. Who wants to start here? Go ahead, Councilor Prentice.
Yeah, just wondering, how many projects have you done where you've built this close to that many residential places, and what's your response been to that?
Well, Caroline was the first one that we're working on, but it's just a little bit further down the road than this is. This is our first.
So there's nothing been built in a heavy-duty residential area like we
No.
got here, so.
No,
So
our
the
other
response-
projects are in MDs out in the counties.
So the place you're building there is a pretty small place, I take it?
Caroline?
Parallel?
Oh, 500 people?
Yeah, okay, so quite a difference. We got more than that population up there, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Just to backtrack off of Councilor Prentice's question there, because you're probably going to get a lot of questions from the residential areas there. How do you respond to that?
How would I respond to that? I could ask how many people in this room use electricity.
Okay.
We need electricity in this province. We're going to need more of it. We need to find suitable lands to build on it. Those lands can be inside of an urban boundary. Everyone in the city of Brooks uses power. It's a good thing to actually find sustainable ways to service the community with power in itself. Even though the power is going to go to the grid, most of that power will be consumed locally, so within 100 miles of this location. The issue for us is we are very selective about the lands that we use. Yes, we have to look at the fact that they're built next to a front line of 30 dwellings, actually faces it on the Uplands Estates side. Where is a good site would be what I would ask the first person. Where do you think a good site is that we would build this project, if not here? Connecting to the grid is one of the most important things for cost effectiveness. If we're looking at building projects that deliver low cost electricity and environmental attributes, this is one of the best that is out there. Embedding it inside of an urban population gives the urban population appreciation for where their electricity comes from. It doesn't come from 300 miles away. It doesn't come from 100 miles up the road at Sheerness. It comes from right on your doorstep. Viewscape is a big issue. There is no question about it. Property value considerations are also a biggie when you're building with urban projects. The issue really is that it's no different than somebody who has an acreage that has to look at it in a less populated area. You have to have an appreciation for what the stakeholder is concerned about. There's no environmental impact, health-wise or otherwise, to having a solar project built close to a population. So this comes down really to a consideration. Is it going to impact the property values? Is it going to create some health risk? And the answer to both of those is no. So we've done a selection process, and I'm quite happy to demonstrate to council and to anyone else who asks, and we will take steps to put together something before Thursday to show you that we looked at a number of locations within this portion of Brooks to be able to connect to that 25 kV substation that's in the industrial park.
Councilor Wardrop?
Thanks. A couple questions. Could you explain, just in layman's terms for me, what does this 18.5 megawatt AC and DC and what does that translate into for? a
Yeah, people
city
always
our
like
size.
to convert it to how many houses is this going to service?
Please do, though.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a tough one because electricity isn't used that way. We don't dedicate electricity to houses. We dedicate, this is being built and going into a subdivision that was largely built to service an industrial area. So we may want to look at it and say, how many jobs is it going to secure by securing low-cost electricity? How many people looked at their bill last month? Their electricity bill? If you're not locked in, you're paying 24 cents a kilowatt hour. Electricity comes out of a solar project at 7 cents. So if the more solar and the more wind that's built in the province, it actually has an impact of reducing the overall hourly price. So directly, we're looking at probably in the neighborhood of 4,000 or 5,000 houses that could be serviced by this. But in all likelihood, given it's going into a subdivision where the biggest load is industrial, you want to ask how many of those industries on the south side of Brooks could it actually service? And I wouldn't know that unless I did an evaluation of all their bills. That's given the fact that annually we consume something in the range of 2,400 kilowatts annually, or monthly. There's the formula for it is pretty loosey-goosey. If I find I'm hesitant to use that, is I hate that metric. I really don't think it defines the question. We all use electricity, and electricity flows this way and that way to where the load is. In this particular area, the biggest load is going to be on the industrial side of Brooks, even though we have 15,000 people living here. And that's where we're tying in.
So any change in consumer, like, pricing for electricity will not be really
Yeah, if you
felt
look
by
at,
the residents. It would be more in the industrial area of Brooks then, or?
well, the way that you should look at it is by encouraging development within your community, you're encouraging it to take place in other places. The more solar that we develop in these areas, the more power comes from renewable energy sources. That is the lowest cost electricity that can hit the grid. Yes, there's variability to it. Yes, we still need gas to firm it. We need storage to firm it. But by and large, it is the lowest cost. And so you're talking, how much does it take to bring the price down at 7 cents, $70 a megawatt hour? If we had 2,000 or 3,000 megawatts of solar built in the province, you would start to see price stabilizing, because solar produces power at the highest priced hours of the day, and it's generally contracted at a fixed lower price to whoever's buying the power. And then wind produces largely overnight, when the price has, at various times in Alberta, been zero because of the input of wind. And so overall, the more renewables that are built in the province, if you look at the what's called the forward price curve, of which I'm happy to send you a couple if you'd like, shows that as renewables grow in the province, it will actually have a negative price pressure on electricity.
And is this?
And there's also no greenhouse gas
Okay.
tax tied to what we produce.
And so then for you, is this hypothetical then? Because this is your first project that's been completed? Or?
Well, there's nothing hypothetical about it. It's quite well documented in industry reports in Alberta that what they're going to see is that the price goes up because we've shut down coal plants, and we've put in gas plants on 17 of those 18 plants. Gas is more expensive because not only is there greenhouse gas taxes attached to it, it's actually more costly to produce with single cycle gas. So gas being more expensive, if that's what's on, because there's no solar or wind on, then that's what you're going to see is the $124 a megawatt hour that we, I should say $240 a megawatt hour that we paid in December as the wholesale hourly price, instead of the 70, 80, 90s that is felt to be the case 2 or 3 years from now.
Councillor Goodenough?
You had, sorry, before we
Oh,
move
sorry.
to yourself, Joel, you had said there was 2 questions. The first one was about price, the second one was,
I think we kind of got there. Mine was, yeah, it was just more about the direct, I guess, effect for the consumers here within
Yeah.
the city. Like, will that affect cost, whether it's more
what I would
expensive or
suggest to
less
everyone, just because it's what I've done myself and it's what I advise my kids to do, is lock in for the next few years, because the price variability is going to be substantial until we have more of something, and it won't be gas or coal.
I guess, like, and because you answered my question, like, broadly, which of course it is well documented, right? And that
Yes.
it's less money. I guess I was just curious, what could we expect to see for our community specifically in terms of cost?
Well, that's one of the nice things about a deregulated market. You can buy your power from anybody in Alberta. You can buy it from EPCOR in Edmonton, ENMAX in Calgary. There's probably 32 different retailers. So depending on what they're buying to support their contracts, if they're buying from renewable energy suppliers, then you will see price that reflects the renewable energy supply. If you're buying through the AUMA, you're going to see a blended mix of what they're buying from gas, from hydro, from wind, what they're buying to offset what the city is contracting.
And then there would only be a specific portion of people here that would have access to that?
No,
Because
everybody
there would-
has access to that.
Okay, sorry. pardon.
Yeah, just to
Forgive
clarify,
me.
I think what happens here is they produce the electricity, they send it into the pool, and then we buy it back through
Okay.
one of our EPCOR or ATCO or something like that. So there's not a direct benefit of electricity back into the city of Brooks there. They're just using it in the city to send it into the pool.
More
Yeah,
out,
so
yeah.
there's nothing like that.
Yeah, I guess, sorry, to simplify the explanation then, is the electricity price is set on the cost to produce it. So if electricity is produced by coal or natural gas, the price is typically higher for them to produce it, whereas solar is the lowest cost electrical production. So as John had mentioned, it all goes into the same pool, but the more solar we have within Alberta brings the cost of production down, so it will benefit the entire province. But it's not specific to the city of Brooks, but the tax benefit of having that installation here is what you will see directly.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Goodenough.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious on, like, I appreciate the solar aspect of all of this. I'm just curious more on the inconvenience, if I could use that word, towards the residents of that area. And, you know, a lot of some of these 30 homes that you mentioned, their property looks out to the back, and they see prairie now. They see the crops growing, whatever is going on there. And then to go out and the next day to look and see solar panels in the next year. I'm more concerned on that aspect of the look, you know, when you buy, for those people that have kind of maybe like the agricultural side of things. How do you address that issue? And why that location? Why not, you know, that's 100 acres ideally right there, but to the west of it, I guess, or east of it, or west, there's a lot of open land there too. So just kind of curious.
Sure, yeah. Well, if I was a landowner, and I am, and I had an opportunity to increase the revenue that I made from the land, I would do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the Stein family sees this as a great way for them to hang on to this land and to make something more of it than what they have been using of it for almost a generation. So we have to weigh people who have, you know, material benefits of viewshed against the rights and privileges of somebody who is, you know, continuing to use it in an agricultural fashion, but is now producing renewable energy from it. And I think we get lost in some of the discussions about, you can't own a viewshed. It's quite publicly documented that if the viewshed is not of national, provincial, or historical reference, nobody owns the viewshed. And so we balance that against this concept of we have to build this somewhere. Someone's always going to object, almost unilaterally, someone is going to object. Our first 3 projects, you know, to speak to the way that we do our consultation, we're walking into this with eyes wide open. I have built wind projects in Ontario that were in the midst of recreational areas with very well-heeled individuals. You could spit and hit a doctor or a lawyer and run into significant opposition at the project in the beginning, but by the time we finished, everybody understood, you know, I'm not going to convince you that it's a good thing if it's your opinion that it's not, but at least I'm going to put the information out there that will answer the question. And the question is, we need new sources of renewable energy. We need to do it in a way to sustain agriculture. That's what the Stein family wants. They're not going to continue to use this. They're actually on board with seeing what else they can do with it from an agricultural perspective. That's all powered by renewable energy, whether we like it or not. We have to remember that agricultural lands, agricultural production in this province consumes 4% of all the electricity that is consumed in this province. It is a big consumer of electricity. And so the rights and privileges of continuing agricultural uses, whether there's something that we're familiar with or not, is as important to the Stein family and to PACE as it is to the people in Uplands Court. The simplest way to deal with viewshed, although it's not going to deal with all of it, particularly from second-story bedrooms and windows, is to tree screen. We will not be building outside the fence on Upland Courts. We'll be back from the fence probably about 30 meters, and then we'll have a fence, and then we'll probably have a 10-meter green buffer zone. That's why we need 160 acres to get, 100 acres of developable land. There's setbacks that are part of that. So we will do everything in our power to mitigate the 4 landowners that have acreages across the road. The wetlands in that corner are going to preclude development. So they're not going to be staring at solar panels. They'll see solar panels in the distance. But they will see solar panels, there's no question about it. But what they will see is a field that looks in much better condition than what's there now. What's there now is bare soil, it's saline, it's not the most attractive view shed you're going to see from agricultural. Who's to say that the view shed won't be improved by what we do in the end? That's part of the public consultation.
Councillor Jessica.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. A couple of things. I just wanted to confirm the time layout here, because you did make some mention of next year, and I think we're into next year already. So
Yes.
this is, when they say to be done by the end, or nearly done by the end of this year, that's accurate?
Our target is to be in construction if possible by the end of the year.
If we don't have a November like we had this
Well,
year, then
true enough.
December. And the other thing, so I'm not sure what voltages you've got coming off there, and if it's DC, you're going to have to probably convert it over to an AC. But is there a possibility, like that area is zoned, I believe, light industrial and commercial already. Is there a possibility for a project like this to support some commercial industrial development immediately adjacent? Or very
Certainly.
close?
We've had discussions with companies that have approached us about essentially becoming behind the fence. So the electricity would flow through their meter before it hit the grid, but they'd be large consumers of electricity. And
Do you
they're
work
out there.
deals like that? Do you work deals like with companies like that?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, where you could sell it for 8 cents
yep.
a kilowatt or what, oh, okay.
That would be done as a
Before you put it
PPA
in-
rather
Before you
than
put
as-
it into the pool then, right?
Yeah, it would be done, we'd still ship it to the pool. We would do a contract for differences with a PPA to whoever wanted to buy the power as designated to them.
Okay, okay, sorry, yeah. Did somebody, okay, Councillor, Idris.
Like if I heard you correctly, you were saying that you wouldn't expect negative impact from health perspective and from
No negative health
and
impacts.
from property value. How did we come to that property value?
Basically, there are no studies that have been done in Canada with regards to the impact of solar on real estate prices, which is the other big concern that people in Upland would have. All of a sudden, their property values are going to dive. There's been extensive research done. It's actually on our website. You can go and look at it. There's a question that says, how is this going to impact my property values? And there's actual empirical, peer-reviewed studies, not just opinion pieces, that show that there's negative, slightly negative to no to actually slightly positive. So in other words, neutral impact.
But is that based on similar situations or rural
Yes,
communities?
that's based on urban projects built close to urban populations. We were very selective at the ones that we researched. We've actually approached the assessors for 2 other urban projects, one in Calgary and one in Innisfail. You can do this yourself through your own, through the own county tax assessor to see if it's a little early for Brooks 2, but you could see if there was any, in the opinion of the assessor, has there been any negative impact to Brooks Solar 1? I would say probably not. I'd say that the changes in the real estate market from other impacts, such as, the rise in interest rates, has had more of an effect of tanking real estate prices. And that's exactly what these studies say, is that it's so marginal that we don't know whether it's something else that could have impacted it that went on in the community at the same time, a plant closing, somebody moving away, like literally it was, we looked at all these things, and what they all come to the conclusion of, and even the ones that say it's got a negative impact, is to say, but the environmental impacts far outweigh, the social value far outweighs the slightly negative, if no impact at all. And you move through it 2 years later, the solar project's been there for 2 or 3 years, and then everybody's like, what was the big deal when it happens? And I know this because I have 800 megawatts of wind projects turning in Ontario and can go back there. There's people that are still going to be mad from the fact they have to look at a wind turbine, but it hasn't had the disastrous calamity of things that people imagine.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody, okay, Councillor Wardrobe. I just go around the table and make sure, yeah.
So life of the project is 30 years or so, I think you said?
Yeah, we sign a lease for 30 years with one term of renewal, and we pick it as 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, depending on whether or not we've repowered the site at some point in time, put in newer equipment, better performing panels, will determine the overall life, but the life of the first stage is 30 years. That's what the panels are warranted for. The inverters are warranted for 15 years, but we use centralized inverters that when they're hit their time for rebuild, they're actually pulled out, rebuilt, and put back. And so, again, that easily could be 30 years on that equipment.
Okay.
Just to go off that, I'm just kind of curious. You're leasing the land from the landowner, right? You're not buying it, right?
No, we're leasing it,
You're leasing it, okay.
yes.
So then, so if your lease ends, or like, then what? Like, what happens after
Then
the
it gets decommissioned.
completion? Okay, and then would there be any impact to our community if, I don't know, like, I'm not sure, like, how do you?
Well, one would hope that you still need electricity 30 years from now. So the most common thing that happens with solar and wind projects is that they get repowered. That's what they call it. There's a term for it. And they basically put in, they'll take out 4 smaller wind turbines and put in one big one. With solar, they may change the technology from ground mount, which the earlier ones all were. Brook Solar 1 is a ground mount, faces 95 degrees. 180 degrees, sorry, 185 degrees. The goal here would be that what we see is the site being permitted, the connection being there is worth way more than the project scrap value would be. So you would look to probably repower something there as well. That's the plan.
Yeah, and just correct me if I'm, I don't think there's a plan in place for reclamation on this. I know I was at RMA and.
Yeah, there actually is.
Is there a plan? Okay,
Yep.
clarify that.
As required. So when we go through the process of permitting at the AUC
Yeah,
and permitting at Alberta Environment and Park Protected Areas, there is a commitment on our behalf of us decommissioning the site from day one.
okay, that's good.
We have to put in place an environmental management plan and a decommissioning plan, and we have to fund that. So in our lease, and I believe this is I've never seen another lease, and I've been in this business for 25 years, that actually goes through how decommissioning is funded. So we actually propose in year 10 that we establish either a letter of credit or a bond with a bonding agency or a Canadian bank. It states that in the lease, that at year 10 we start populating a decommissioning fund. So we are fully funded to remove that project X scrap value. So the scrap value is your cushion. That flows to the landowner. So if for some reason we go defunct, the LC or the bond is actually co-names the landowner, so they have access to those funds. Now, they may want to decide to sell the project to somebody else and keep those decommissioning funds or leave them in place. It's up to them. But we go to great extent to not only say, yeah, we'll decommission it and it's recyclable, to actually talk about how we're doing it and how we're funding it and making the commitments when people sign the leases.
Okay. Do you have
And,
another
yeah,
question?
if I may, just to summarize, I guess, to your question, at the end of the expected lifetime of the 30 years, depending on if there's new technology, either we will renew the project with new technology, refurbish some equipment to continue it, or if the decision is then to decommission it, we go to the reclamation plan that's in place. And this happens right from the construction. So for example, any topsoil that needs to be moved is stored in an area where it can be spread back to its original state. The piles, the steel that's put in the ground to support all the panels are fairly small and not as deep as you would see in some, heavy industrial installations. So these can be pulled out. Solar panels can be recycled or refurbished, same with the electrical equipment. So the intent then is that that land will be returned to the exact state it was in before, if not improved, given that we will plant some plants in there to refurbish it and replenish the soil and this kind of thing. So the intent is that, if we do decommission it, it will be left intact, if not improved.
Thank you.
Explain your egg component to me. You talked about the egg component somewhere. Did you plant something in there?
Yeah, so there is a world effort to grow the use of renewable energy in agriculture. Unlike, our goal here isn't to point a finger at anyone with regards to their greenhouse gas productions, but a little known fact is that between forestry production and agricultural production, food production, and food distribution, you can take, the International Energy Agency, you can take UNESCO's figures. Agriculture contributes to 35 to 40% of all the greenhouse gases in the world. And greenhouse gases from agriculture, as we try to grow more food with more fertilizers, with more inputs, with more fuel, that number is going up at the same rate that we're trying to achieve the Paris Accord going down. So if we don't get a grip on agriculture and food production, the big problem is we need to grow more. I mean, you can see the price of food gone up 11% in Alberta this year, second only to Quebec, in actual fact. We have to find a better way to do this. And so we formed a group called Agrivoltaics Canada. The first conference was at Western University in Ontario to kick off an effort to bring 4% of arable lands under what's called agrivoltaics production. And that includes using irrigation, particular crop practices, grazing practices, on-site production of hydrogen, which could lead to on-site production of ammonia, which is a fertilizer input for some people. We're partnered with Southern Irrigation in looking at the impacts of subsoil drip irrigation, which actually uses, although much more capital intensive than a pivot or a wheel line, actually uses 30% of the water that wheel lines or pivots use in producing the same Alberta-based cereal grain crop or oil crop. That's not me saying this. Those are the 2,000 acres they have under test in Alberta currently down in the Lethbridge area. And our goal working with them is to develop systems where we'd be able to use renewable energy to pump water, to irrigate with water, to look at ways to manufacture on-farm products and to reduce the overall cost of operation, hydrogen production for larger vehicles like B trains for hauling grain, even tractors. I'm not a big fan of battery-operated farm equipment other than small farm stuff, farm production like utility tractors. The bigger equipment is all going to be hydrogen-based, and Europe's already headed that way. John Deere's coming out with mid-size frame hydrogen and electric vehicles next year. In 2 years, you're not going to be able to buy a large combine with a steering wheel. Everything is going GPS, automated. Agriculture can change to be something entirely different than what it has been for the last few generations, because we have to do more with less. Less fertilizers reduces nitrous oxide, which is, some people say 27 times more pollutant than CO2 in the upper atmosphere. This isn't about cattle belching and, manure and so on and so forth, although those are big contributors. This is about the practices on every farm needing to be rejigged, as it were, for the new renewable paradigm that's coming upon us.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about the procedure here. And I need a clarification on this too. I'm going to give you a scenario. Okay, let's say we give you a letter of support to the AUC. That would certainly help your cause. If we were against it, can the AUC trump us?
They will look at what you
From what I understand
said.
in my discussions, I think they make the final decision on this and not us.
No, you make the final decision. It's your development permits that I have to get in order to actually take the
But,
AUC.
so if we said no, AUC couldn't override us then?
Yeah, it would become much more complicated for us. There are appeal
Okay, no, yeah,
processes
no,
for
and
us, but
that's-
we're not looking for communities like that. We're looking for communities that
Yeah.
recognize what we're doing. If we get into that kind of a storm, then we have to look at, it's declining benefits to everybody.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
wants to force renewable energy development on a community that doesn't want it. I've been there, done that. It's just doesn't work.
Okay, no, good for the clarification, okay. Go ahead, Councillor Idris, then.
Just with this final talk about irrigation, is there an opportunity for collaboration with EID? Have you had some conversations with them about that?
Yeah, this is, there's 14,000 megawatts of agrivoltaics around the world, largely in countries like China and Japan, Germany, the Netherlands. There's tons of work being done between Germany, Netherlands, and France with growing crops. Climate change is horrifically impacting food production. In BC last summer, not this past summer, the summer before that, I should say, they lost the entire vintage in southern Okanagan to heat stress and smoke. They literally had to pour it out when they were done with it. Cherry crop was gone, raspberry crop was gone from heat stress. In Holland, they're growing all those things under solar. So they're growing multiple crops, rotating crops under solar. The farms are much smaller, different practices, different environment. You move to places like Israel. 87% of Israel's municipal water is recycled, not for potable consumption. It's cleaned up and sent off and used in the Negev desert to grow food. So they literally have built 6 or 7 major sewage treatment plants that literally create water that they're going to use to make the desert blossom. And so there's no end to this. We look at it and say, where's the water source coming from for hydrogen? Are we going to compete with irrigation for that water source? No, the municipal water supply from sewage treatment that flows back into the rivers is undocumented. And so uncalculated. And so we could redirect those types of water flows. It's really what are we willing to look at and do. As far as collaboration goes, absolutely. One of our values is collaboration. So we're not only collaborating with the landowner to make their land better than when we set ourselves upon it, but also the communities that we're in. And so, the issue really for us is we think we have a good idea, but we're not the only gray head in the room. There's lots of other ideas. So we are partnering with Lethbridge and Olds College this year to promote agrivoltaics within Alberta, looking for a few test plots. This project is going to be done in the simplest form, which is to bring the land back to production, possibly look at moving the rows further apart so we can use small-scale forage equipment in between the rows. All those are done at a sacrifice for energy density. But what are we trying to achieve here? We're trying to achieve renewable energy while increasing the production from agriculture.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Just invite you to come out Thursday night if you
Yep.
can. You'll find that slide presentation has a lot of these concepts that we've been talking about. I didn't want to go through the full 34 slides with council tonight. You don't have enough time for that. But by all means, those items will be discussed at length on Thursday night. And unlike other folks, when we sense as a community where there might be some vocal opposition, our format will be a seminar approach. So we will deliver a formal seminar approach that will cover all those topics and then take open questions from the floor as opposed to a bunch of people shuffling around a poster board session in a room. It's a little bit riskier, but if you're going to get the complaints out, you want to get them out and heard.
Yeah, and again, the public meeting is at the library this Thursday from 6 to 8, and then again, March 16th, you have another one
Yep.
from 6:30 to 8:30, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you for your time this afternoon.
thank you very much, Mayor and Council.
Okay.
Thank you, Council.
To the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, moved by Councilor Prentice that the council approve the Urban Hen Pilot Program for a 2-year period from January 1st, 2023 to January 1st, 2025. Amanda.
Through the chair to mayor and council, during the council committee meeting that was held on, council committee meetings that were held on October 11th and then on November the 15th, administration presented the draft Urban Hen Pilot Program guidelines to you. Administration did contact the Office of the Chief Provincial Veterinarian to discuss concerns regarding avian influenza. And Dr. Lehman advised that there are no concerns or were no concerns with starting the program in the winter, and advised to require participants to register for a premises identification number, which was already a requirement in the program guidelines that you had seen in the past. There were 2 clauses that were added to the attached guidelines from the last time that it was presented, which were highlighted within the document that's attached. And that is the city's ability to terminate the program, and that was added in case of extreme circumstances, such as an outbreak of avian influenza in our area. And the ability to remove a participant that is continuously not following the requirements and restrictions of the pilot program, that was also added as well. Therefore, administration is recommending that council approve the Urban Hen Pilot Program for a 2-year period from January 1st, 2023 to January 1st, 2025.
Okay, any questions? Counselor Goodenough.
Small question, and it's more of a hypothetical, but has there been any consideration of how much time this could take on our bylaw officers to enforce?
So there was a discussion, Amy did speak to council about this, that the department would not police the guidelines thoroughly, but it would be something that would be complaint-driven, a complaint-driven process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Jessica.
I know there was some stuff out there in social media and 1 or 2 letters coming out generally against it. I have spoken to one person, long-term Brooks resident that is experienced with chickens and was really looking forward to this. Has there been much more in the way of public input towards this whole project?
So I've been monitoring the Newell Connect complaint tracking system while Amy has been away and over the holiday season, and there has been nothing entered in complaint tracking regarding hens or the pilot program.
Okay, any other questions? So when we go to the motion, once this is approved, we can start the hen project this year then. Okay, to the motion, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay. Carried. Okay, questions from the media? Okay, thank you, Sandra. Okay, moved by Councillor Wardrop that the meeting adjourn at 5, what's it? Oh, I thought you said Happy New Year and you were gonna leave. Too late. Okay, yeah, too late.
Am I online?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, please, on the solar farm. Can you please tell me when the city will make its decision for or against the project, please?
Oh, and maybe I'll leave that up to Alan. I think we want to know what happens at the public meetings. There's one on Thursday. Councillor Goodenough?
I think it would be important just to note that this is not a city-driven initiative.
No.
Right? And there has been a misconception out there in the public that the city is doing this.
Right.
And I think that was important that this is Pace Enterprises and a family farm that's interested in this. So if that could be noted in your questions, thanks.
Yeah, and then Alan could maybe give us some ideas for timelines. Yeah, we have to, the time I was looking at the development permits, they come back in, I thought I saw that there, somewhere along there. Anyway, okay, I'll give it to Alan here.
I guess that'll definitely be up to council, but I suspect they're going to want to hear what the residents have to say, weigh the information that is presented today and Thursday, and the feedback from the residents before they make that decision.
It says here,
So
Sandra,
then you're expecting this possibly not until after the March 16th meeting, is that, after the March 16th open house
the
with the
permitting
company, is
doesn't.
that correct?
Yeah, I would think so after that, but the permitting they have in Q3, 2023 on their timeline. But so we would probably discuss it after, probably in April, then I would assume April or May after those public meetings. Yeah.
My other question is there anything regarding setbacks in the city's land use bylaw regarding solar panels or any other rules around solar panels or farms, please?
Yeah. We're gonna get the expert on this here, Alicia.
So technically, the way our land use bylaw is written right now, we don't have a use for this size or this scale of a solar project. So if council were to wish to proceed and back something like this, we would have to do a land use bylaw amendment. Right now, the property is zoned direct control, which means anything proposed on that site would have to come to council anyways. And we could come up with specific rules or requirements for that type of development on the city's behalf.
Okay, anything else, Sandra?
No, that's good, thank you.
Are you done now?
I am, thank you.
Okay, so, sorry for cutting you off there. Okay, moved by Councilor Wardrop that the meeting adjourn at 5:37 PM. All those in favor? Carried, okay.